Alright, today we're going to look at solving trig equations, and I've tried to break this down into kind of beginner, intermediate, advanced type questions. And so these first two are supposed to be just kind of beginner questions. Pretty basic. You should be able to solve these pretty quickly if you have your unit circle out. So if you don't have your unit circle out, I'd encourage you to get that out right now. So one of the most common mistakes I'll see when people are solving this one is they'll use their calculator and they won't get necessarily the correct answer. So they see this and they'll do cosine inverse of 1/2 to figure out the angle, which isn't a bad idea. And when you do that, you end up getting 60 degrees on your calculator. But what this is asking you is, it says the cosine value is 1/2. What's the angle associated where cosine is 1/2? Well, yeah, 60, the x value is 1/2, that's the cosine value, but it also occurs at 300. So there are two possible answers here. It's either 300 or 60 is also the correct answer. So you have to look for multiple cases where the x value is 1/2. And here it's 300 and it's also 360, or it's also 60. So the next one, it says when is the sine value negative root 2 over 2. So we're looking at the y coordinate for sine, and when is that negative root 2 over 2. So I see that down here at 315. I also see it over here at 225. So theta in this example could be 225. The other correct answer is 315. Okay, so those were more of the beginner entry-level type questions. Let's look at some intermediates. This tangent equals root 3. This is very similar to the previous problem, but we have to do a little bit of math to figure out what tangent is. And so if you remember, tangent is just y over x. So we want to look at our unit circle and find where is it on the unit circle where when we take the y divided by the x, we get square root 3. So there's a few sections I can cancel out right away. I know this section and I know this section will not give me this answer. And I know that because one's positive, one's negative. If you take positive divided by negative, you get a negative. And this is obviously not negative, it's a positive number. So it can't be in either of these two quadrants. It's got to be up here, and it has to be down here, because this is positive divided by positive, and this is negative divided by negative. All right, so I know it's not going to be 45. Root 2 over 2 divided by root 2 over 2, they're the same number. When you divide them, you get 1. So likewise, it's not going to be 225. So it has to be 30 or 60. I'm not quite sure. I always have to kind of calculate this to get it. So I'm going to take the y value divided by the x value and see if I get root 3 for 30. So I'm going to take 1/2 divided by root 3 over 2. When we divide fractions, I remember that I multiply by the reciprocal. So multiply by 2 over root 3. The 2's cancel out. We get 1 over root 3, which ends up being root 3 over 3. And that's not that. So it's not going to be 30 degrees. So my guess is it's going to be 60 by process of elimination. But let's double check and make sure that we indeed are correct with that conjecture. So let's do root 3 over 2 divided by 1/2. Okay, when we divide these fractions, we end up multiplying by the reciprocal. The 2's cancel out, and look at there, we get root 3. Okay, so it is 60. And then down in this quadrant, it's going to be 240. And I know that because 240 has the same x and y values as 60, except they're both negative. So when they're both negative, we divide negative by negative, and we end up with a positive. So it's going to be 60 and 240 are the two answers. 60 degrees, 240 degrees. Okay, let's take a look at the next one. I'm going to move this unit circle out of the way and erase these markings. So it says 2 sine theta plus root 3 equals 0. This one's actually not much different than the previous page either. You just have to do a little bit of math first. So we're going to solve this equation. I'm going to subtract root 3 from both sides. We get 2 sine theta equals negative root 3. We divide both sides by 2, and we get sine theta equals negative root 3 over 2. So I'm looking here for a y value where it's negative root 3 over 2. So nothing here. There we go. 240 is going to be a y value negative root 3 over 2, and 300. These are the two that have a y value of negative root 3 over 2. So my two answers are 240 and 300. Okay, last one. I'm going to erase these marks, and then we're going to move this unit circle a little bit out of the way. It says 4 plus 3 cosine theta minus 2 equals 2. Okay, so let's solve this just like we did this one. I want to add 2 to both sides. And there are many right ways to start this. This is just the way I started it. We get 4 plus 3 cosine theta equals 4. Then I'll subtract 4 from both sides to get this cosine stuff all by itself. 3 cosine theta equals 0. We divide by 3, and we end up with cosine theta equals 0. So, when is the x value, the cosine value, equal to 0? Well, at 90, the x is 0, and at 270. So my two values for theta here, theta is going to be 90, or it's going to be 270. All right, so those are the three kind of intermediate level questions. Let's look at some somewhat advanced questions. It definitely gets harder than these two, but let's take a look at these two. So the first one, it's just like the previous one. We solve for cosine, and then we figure out what the answer is from there. So I'm going to subtract 2 cosine theta from both sides. And I get 1 plus 3 cosine theta equals negative 2. I'll subtract 1 from both sides. I get 3 cosine theta equals negative 3. So let's divide by 3. We get cosine theta equals negative 1. So I don't know if this is any more advanced than the previous one. It's basically the same thing. So cosine theta equals negative 1. When is the x value negative 1? It looks like there's only one answer here. It's at 180. So in this case, theta does not have multiple answers. It just has one answer, which is 180. Okay, and I can assure you the next one does have a touch of advancedness to it. There is one main difference between this one and the first advanced problem. So we have 2 cosine squared plus root 3 cosine equals 0. Well, I know right away I see a factoring problem. When I see an x squared or a cosine squared, I'm going to factor this left side. So I don't have to set up the parentheses and factor that way because there's only two terms. So right now I'm going to factor out a GCF. And the greatest common factor is cosine theta. When I factor that out, what's left here is 2 cosine theta. And then what's left here is just square root 3. So factoring is basically distributing or undistributing. So if I distribute this cosine in, we'd get 2 cosine squared theta, and we get root 3 cosine theta. Okay, so either cosine theta equals 0, so this equals 0, or this equals 0. Or 2 cosine theta plus root 3 equals 0. So we're going to solve each part separately, and we'll figure out the answers for each part. Well, cosine theta equals 0. We already figured that out. That's when the x is 0. That's 90 or 270. Okay, the next one, we have to do a little bit more math. We'll subtract root 3. We get 2 cos theta equals negative root 3. Divide by 2 on both sides. I get cosine theta equals negative root 3 over 2. So let's take a peek at our unit circle. When is cosine negative root 3 over 2? So when is the x negative root 3 over 2? Looks like at 150 and at 210. So here theta is 150 or it's 210. So in this case, there are 4 possible answers: 90, 270, 150, and 210 that will make this expression true. Alright, so that's it for this lesson on solving trig equations.